You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
Have you ever witnessed a cinematic event so chaotic that it became a legend for all the wrong reasons? Picture this: a highly anticipated remake backed by one of the biggest studios in the world, an actress who once seemed poised for a fairy tale, and an end result so turbulent that headlines couldn't decide whether to be amused, appalled, or just plain stunned. That's exactly what happened with the recent live-action retelling of a beloved fairy tale, a project that didn't just miss the mark, but crashed hard enough to make the entire industry do a double take. Today, we're stepping into the aftermath of that colossal flop. We're uncovering what led to a high-stakes spectacle transforming into a cautionary tale. Along the way, we'll examine the controversies swirling around lead actress Rachel Zegler, the rumored feuds and public missteps that set social media ablaze, and the blowback that's left theaters eerily empty.
Snow White Remake is now one of the lowest rated films in IMDb history. This is such a poor reception for a Disney princess movie, and I'll be surprised if it even has a 1-star tomorrow because the bad reviews keep pouring in by the second.
There's no simple explanation for how this once promising reboot lost its crown, but one thing's for sure. The ripple effects aren't just about box office figures. They're about reputations, studio reputations, and the unpredictable drama that happens when a centuries-old story collides with a modern audience that's armed with hashtags and quick to judge. So buckle up, because this is more than just a movie flop. This is a modern entertainment meltdown that raises serious questions about how quickly a star can fall from grace, and whether or not one ill-fated project can spell doom for an entire career. Section 1. The unprecedented flop. Even if you rarely track box office numbers, you couldn't miss the headlines this time around.
Even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed, because you're comparing it to one of the most beloved films of all time and a truly groundbreaking movie.
Empty theaters galore, record-breaking disaster, historic bomb. These are not the sort of tags any actor or studio wants attached to their film. Yet from the moment those first weekend earnings trickled in, it was clear that this reimagined Snow White adaptation was crashing and burning, and at a pace few people could have predicted. Social media exploded with clips of near-deserted auditoriums, as if the film had become radioactive. Some folks online half-jokingly claimed they had the entire theater to themselves, complete with unlimited elbow room and echoing footsteps. Others posted screenshots from ticket booking sites showing showtimes with row upon row of unsold seats, a sea of blue where reserved seats should be. When you factor in that the studio behind this fiasco poured a rumored $300 to $400 million into production and marketing, the heartbreak is almost palpable. This wasn't some small experimental film that needed a cult following to break even. This was supposed to be a surefire relaunch of one of Disney's most iconic stories. By the end of its second weekend, the numbers made it painfully obvious that the situation was dire. A dramatic drop in revenue signaled that the film had lost any chance of a late-breaking redemption. For a mega-budget release, such a drastic fall from an already weak opening is basically the kiss of death. Analysts started sounding alarms. Would this be the biggest misfire of the year, or perhaps even the decade? Little did the general public know, the story behind these dismal numbers was even more dramatic than the box office tallies suggested. The controversies, the behind-the-scenes whispers, the endless online feuding, those elements all converged into a perfect storm. Instead of uniting audiences in nostalgic delight, the film sparked a swirl of outrage, mockery, and heated debates that overshadowed any bit of cinematic magic.
Yeah, the entire film's about a love story. It's about a love story because that's what the point of the film is, and I'm sorry that chivalry and a man pursuing you is now deemed as stalking, which now it's kind of making sense why men are opting out of the dating scene.
Empty seats became a visual metaphor for the film's crumbling fortunes, signifying how thoroughly fans had checked out. Now, every film that flops has some explanation: weak marketing, poor timing, stiff competition. But in this case, many fans believe the real dagger was the overt departure from the 1937 animated classic. Disney's Snow White is cherished for its retro charm, a story about a princess, a prince, a wicked queen, and 7 quirky friends. For decades, that original film was off-limits in terms of direct critique among the Disney faithful, who treat it like a founding myth. So when Rachel Zegler publicly blasted the storyline as weird and took issue with key elements, like the portrayal of the prince, fans were immediately divided.
Exactly what they're doing And that is why we hate the diversity, equity, and inclusion casting and writing in movies.
Some applauded her candor, saying it was time to modernize old tropes, while others found it arrogant to dismiss the foundation of a beloved childhood treasure. Critics argued that the production had embraced an update so heavy-handed it lost the fairy tale essence. Suddenly, the promotional interviews weren't about magical wonder. They were about moral lessons and political undertones. People who had grown up adoring Snow White felt almost alienated. They might have been open to a fresh take, but the condescending tone in certain statements, talking about fixing or correcting the original, rubbed them the wrong way. And then there was the broader PR predicament. Rachel Zegler made polarizing political remarks, at one point allegedly telling certain political groups not to bother seeing the film if they disagreed with her. While celebrities voicing strong opinions is nothing new, tangling that stance with the marketing push for a family-friendly classic was another matter. Imagine parents who merely wanted to share a nostalgic fairy tale with their kids, only to hear the lead actress disparaging an entire swath of potential viewers. That's where the pot started to boil over, and the online chatter quickly escalated from mild annoyance to full-blown fury. Social media watchers noted a shift in the film's reception at this point. What should have been a wave of warm nostalgia turned into a case study in bad optics. Instead of letting the new adaptation speak for itself, it felt like the star was rewriting the entire concept of Snow White, with the not-so-subtle implication that older fans were just out of date. Rumors circulated that Disney's top brass were privately alarmed, recognizing that they might have a monumental PR issue on their hands. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire, and nowhere was that more evident than in the swirling gossip about friction on set. Word on the grapevine was that Rachel Zegler and her co-star Gal Gadot found themselves at odds. Some fans pointed to clipped or awkward moments during promotional events, moments that watchers dissected frame by frame for hidden tension. Others swore that Rachel's intermittent jabs at pageant queen personalities were veiled digs at Gadot's background and polished public persona. Of course, official statements from Disney insisted all was well, but the rumor mill seldom needs official sanction to churn out drama. Allegedly, the studio increased Gadot's security detail after a series of ominous online threats. Whether or not that was directly linked to any single cast member's remarks is up for debate, but many saw it as a sign of just how toxic the discourse around this film had become. For a brand that typically prided itself on family values and squeaky clean reputations, it was jarring to see so many negative headlines piling up. The controversies weren't limited to the cast. Internet sleuths claimed that the production itself had gone through multiple rewrites, last-minute changes, and a swirl of rumors regarding the portrayal of the dwarfs. Some versions included them, others replaced them, and fans felt it was all a messy attempt at modernizing something best left untouched. Meanwhile, insiders whispered that tension had reached a fever pitch with the producers, and even higher-ups at the studio. After all, nobody wants their multi-million-dollar gamble overshadowed by offhand comments from actors who have yet to fully establish themselves in Hollywood's top tier. Yet the real fireworks often happen off-camera, as social media watchers posted screenshots of Rachel seemingly skipping mentions of certain co-stars in thank you posts. This fed into theories of personal beef. Conspiracy-like speculation took over, and at some point, the film's content felt like an afterthought to the interpersonal drama swirling around it. The once glamorous behind-the-scenes story turned into a tabloid magnet. Instead of hearing about production magic or heartwarming set stories, fans saw mounting controversies overshadowing every glimpse of positivity. When the conversations moved beyond film aficionados to mainstream audiences, that's when things got truly wild. The lightning rod for a lot of the backlash was Rachel Zegler herself, whose social media presence felt more combative than promotional. Some supporters believed she was simply clapping back at trolls, but a substantial chunk of the movie-going public saw an actress punching down at fans who had legitimate criticisms or concerns. Fan-based forums filled up with negative reviews, and then the memes took over. In the online age, mocking a film can be far more damaging than ignoring it. Once it's turned into a cultural joke, reversing that narrative is nearly impossible. Memes about the film's emptiness, Rachel's outspoken comments, and the jarring differences from the source material became unstoppable. People who hadn't even planned on watching the film were gleefully chiming in on the spectacle, sometimes even amplifying misinformation. Ratings plummeted, with the Internet Movie Database, IMDb, showing historically low scores in certain windows. While some might argue that review bombing was at play, where crowds intentionally sabotage a rating platform, the cumulative effect was still disastrous. The film's public reputation sunk like a stone. When your major selling point is a recognizable story that's supposed to elicit multi-generational nostalgia, the last thing you want is widespread negativity overshadowing any potential positivity. Meanwhile, rumors abounded that the studio or individuals associated with the film had tried to do damage control, removing old interview clips, urging the cast to adopt a friendlier tone, or even paying for some form of positive social media boost. None of these tactics found solid footing with the public. Once an opinion hits critical mass, turning the tide often proves futile. It didn't help that each piece of damage control felt half-hearted, leading fans to believe it was purely a business tactic rather than a genuine change of heart. If anyone hoped the final numbers might salvage the situation, reality offered a harsh correction. The monstrous production and marketing budget, rumored to be close to $370 million or more, set a high bar for breaking even, let alone turning a profit. By the end of the second weekend, it became painfully clear that meeting this break-even point was out of the question. The domestic tally crawled upward at a snail's pace, while international markets didn't fare much better. With blockbusters competing every weekend, theaters began reassigning prime showtimes to newer releases that brought in better crowds. Social media commentary about vacant auditoriums validated that choice. Analysts started forecasting losses upwards of $100 million, making the film a poster child for the pitfalls of misguided remakes and marketing. The brand behind it, Disney, found itself in an awkward position. On the one hand, it's an entertainment behemoth with plenty of other revenue streams. On the other, no studio likes to be associated with consecutive flops, especially after already enduring skepticism about its live-action revival strategy. Merchandise tie-ins also reportedly performed poorly. Retailers noticed the usual hype that accompanies Disney princess branding just never caught fire this time. Instead of the usual lines of children happily begging for the new princess dolls or costumes, there was an eerie silence. Some long-time Disney fans felt genuinely uninterested, claiming that they disliked both the final product and the negative energy emanating from the film's promotion. Others simply found alternative family movies that aligned better with their nostalgic or creative expectations. Industry insiders began taking notes. After all, if a classic fairy tale adaptation bankrolled by one of the biggest names in the business can flounder this badly, it's a warning sign. The meltdown wasn't just about one actress's remarks or one executive's decision. It was a perfect storm of mismanaged public relations, a divisive modern spin on an age-old narrative, and a star who might have underestimated the power of fan backlash. One of the biggest questions swirling around Tinseltown is whether Rachel Zegler can recover from what many see as a self-inflicted PR wound. Not too long ago, she was riding a wave of acclaim, lauded for her vocal talent, discovered by an iconic director, and seen as a fresh new face in Hollywood. But after her handling of the Snow White fiasco, rumors started cropping up left and right about abrupt project cancellations. First came whispers that her potential role in another big Disney franchise, possibly Toy Story 5 or a revamp of Pirates of the Caribbean, had been quietly shelved or reassigned. People scoured casting notices and corporate announcements, finding no trace of her name where it had once been rumored to appear. Then there were murmurs that Blumhouse, often stylized as Plumhouse in rumor circles to avoid direct call-outs, had stepped away from negotiations for a horror trilogy because of the baggage she was bringing. No official confirmations surfaced, but the pattern was hard to dismiss. Hollywood tends to distance itself from unpredictable elements, especially if they're relatively new and haven't proven bankable stardom. Even if an actor is talented, the risk of negative press can outweigh potential box office gains. The fact that Rachel posted sporadically about cherishing her experience with the Snow White project, despite the catastrophic reception, only added more fuel to the rumor fire. Was she in denial, or was she genuinely proud of her performance, overshadowed as it might have been by controversy? Of course, celebrity comebacks are a dime a dozen in Hollywood. It's entirely possible that with the right project, a rebrand, or a strategic shift in public persona, Rachel could reclaim goodwill. But for now, the water cooler talk in industry circles is that producers are skittish about working with someone who seemed to alienate large swaths of the target audience during a crucial marketing window. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more behind-the-scenes truths about Hollywood's highs and lows, Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel.